Let's be honest about the title right away. Get rich with $100. I bet you've seen a lot of titles like that. Usually there's a guy in front of a sports car talking about mindset and casually forgetting to mention his dad owns half the city. Forget about all that. This is a $100 bill. It won't buy you a Lamborghini by Tuesday, but this single bill is enough to buy a domain, a platform, and see whether e-commerce is your thing or not. Let's start. The first decision that can wreck your budget is the platform. You go online and you've got Shopify, Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, and a bunch of other platforms. Which one do you choose? First, there's the Shopify path. It's the default one. Almost every I started a store tutorial assumes you're on Shopify. Sure, the interface is clear, the ecosystem is huge, but there's a catch. The trouble usually starts after your account is created. You register and get a store, look at the default theme, and you feel like it doesn't look like all those polished brands you've seen on Instagram. You buy a premium theme, then you install an app for reviews, then another one for pop-ups, another one for upsells, for emails, for analytics. Each app is just a few dollars, but month after month, it adds up. And suddenly, your cute little store is costing you more than it makes. That's usually the point where people announce that e-commerce doesn't work, when in reality, they just built a very expensive playground. Then there are site builders like Wix or Squarespace. Sure, you can quickly make something that looks good, drag, drop, change the font, move things around. It feels creative and satisfying, and you can get a pretty homepage within a couple of hours. But then again, you have to look at what the plan costs every month and what you're actually getting for that price. Some plans are aimed at simple websites and portfolios. E-commerce plans tend to sit in a higher price tier. When your entire starting budget is $100 or $200, that difference matters. And then there's the third option. There are platforms that allow you to skip the technical setup and begin selling almost right away. For a challenge like ours, where every dollar matters, that kind of option helps because you're not going to drain your whole budget just to open shop. I personally like Selvia. Sure, they don't provide an in-depth setup like Shopify or Wix, but their sites get things done. Again, I'm not here to tell you that this is what's good and everything else is trash. The question you need to ask yourself is a lot simpler. With the amount of money you have, which option leaves you with enough budget to actually bring people into your store? If your monthly platform bill eats up almost everything, it's not a business, because business means you're putting profit in your pockets. Next up is the domain name. This is where most people cross the line from I'm thinking about maybe starting a store to okay, I'm in. And here's why it matters. When you see a long, messy subdomain with the platform's name stuck at the end, it feels like a test page. But when it's short and clean, it sounds like a real brand. It feels more solid, and people are going to be more eager to buy. Domains themselves are usually not super expensive, and the dangerous part here is not the money, it's how long people can stall on the domain name. So many beginners freeze here. They open a domain search, type something in, see that it's taken, and they end up paralyzed. They start asking friends for opinions. They open note-taking apps and write long lists. They convince themselves that if they don't find the perfect name, their business will fail. Meanwhile, days are passing by and nothing's happening. You're not building another Amazon. You're testing whether you can find a product, make an offer, and make people buy. Just pick a name that you can say out loud without feeling weird, that you can spell easily, and that doesn't clearly belong to some giant existing brand in your niche. If it passes those tests and you can afford it, grab it and move on. If later your store takes off and you decide the name is not quite right, you can always rebrand. Now, let's take a look at the actual money in your hands. So we said that we're starting with $100, right? You need a domain. That's going to take a small chunk. You need a platform to run the store on. That's going to take another chunk. Depending on which one you choose, whatever is left has to cover your first experiments with traffic. Let's say that you're left with $60. It becomes clear very quickly that you can't afford to throw money at every shiny object. There's no room for hiring designers, buying fancy themes, or stacking paid apps just because a tutorial said they're must-have. But I advise you to work with at least $200. This way, you're less fragile. You still can't go wild on fancy extras, but you don't feel like your entire future depends on one single ad running for 2 days. If the first idea flops, you can regroup and run another small test instead of going, oh well, guess I'll try again next month. But even $100 is enough to find out whether it's worth doing. This part makes a lot of people nervous. I'm not a designer. My store will look cheap. Relax. You're not competing with Apple's design department. You just need to look like a competent businessman who isn't trying to scam anyone. Your goal early on is simple. Just avoid that "this feels off" reaction. The logo can be just your store name written in a clear font. That's it. Think of most fashion brands. Their logos are literally just text. Nobody stands in front of a Zara store thinking, "Wow, that font changed my life." The color should help people read and focus and not fight for attention. One main background tone, one color that you use for important buttons and highlights, maybe a gentle neutral shade for text if you like. Speaking of products, the images are where trust either grows or dies. You want photos that tell the truth about what people will get. If you're using supplier images, choose the ones that look clean and natural, not the ones full of glitter and huge fake fonts. The layout doesn't need to be complex. People are used to certain patterns. Logos at the top, navigation, a main section, products, and information in the footer. If you keep things where shoppers expect them to be, they feel at home immediately. And before you ask, no, a premium theme doesn't automatically fix everything. A badly configured, expensive theme looks worse than a well-configured free one. At this stage, the smartest thing you can do is take something basic and make it neat. Now we come to the main question. What on earth am I going to sell? This is where a lot of people get confused. They see a hot product blow up on social media and decide, that's it. 2 days later, another trendy product attracts their attention. And oh brother, the confusion. Instead of treating TikTok as your business oracle, ask yourself, will people still want this thing a year later? I'm not talking about the product itself, but the whole category. For example, home organizing stuff is going to be relevant forever. We'll always want to make our homes more comfortable. Pet owners will spoil their animals no matter what. Phone accessories will keep selling as long as companies keep upgrading their phones and removing all the useful things from the box. That doesn't mean you have to completely ignore trends. You can absolutely ride a wave if it fits into a broader, more stable category. But it's safer to anchor your store in something that doesn't disappear the moment an algorithm gets bored. When people hear ads, they imagine huge budgets, complicated dashboards, and a quick path to losing all their money in 30 minutes. It can feel intimidating, especially if you've never run an ad campaign before. Sure, you can launch the store and wait, tweak the colors, adjust the logo, rewrite your about page. It feels safe and easy, but it's a trap. Paying for some traffic early on doesn't mean going all in with the money you can't afford to lose. It just means you're willing to pay a little bit to find out what people think. Look at what's left in your budget and decide how much you're willing to put into a first test. With $60, it might be enough for a small campaign that runs for a few days. With $140, you might be more relaxed and let the test run a little longer or try an extra angle. The important thing is how you look at the results. Instead of asking yourself, did I get rich? Pay attention to the behavior. Are people even looking at your ad? If they scroll past it, the message or image isn't doing its job. Are they clicking but leaving the page in 2 seconds? Maybe the page feels confusing and doesn't match what you promised in the ad. Are they filling the cart and then abandoning it? The problem might be shipping, pricing, or the checkout process. Look at the data on the results. That's where people are giving you the real feedback. Payment fees, refunds, domain renewals, subscriptions. Every time someone pays you, a little piece of that money goes to the payment processor. It's how they make a living. If you price your products as if you're keeping every cent, you'll be confused later when the math doesn't add up. Orders will sometimes go wrong, packages get lost, people change their minds. That's part of the business. If your entire plan only works when nobody ever returns anything, it's not a business plan, but rather a fantasy novel. Just be aware that these things exist. When you set your prices, when you think about your margin, keep a tiny part of your mind reserved for fees, bad orders, and the future. If your store can pay its basic costs and still have something left for you, you're already in a better position than a lot of people who only chase revenue screenshots. So no, $100 will not magically turn into a private island. But it can become the moment you point to years later when someone asks, when did you actually start? And you say, that weekend, I stopped watching other people do it and finally opened my own store. Treat this opportunity like a tool for learning because it can change your life completely, believe me. And the best thing is that $100 is not that big a sum of money. If you fail, try again next month or in 2 months, slowly and quietly. You adjust until the thing starts to work. That's how $100 or $200 stops being too small and becomes the first real step into running your own online business. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to click the like button and subscribe to my channel. See y'all soon. Peace.